She cleaned her father's attic and found letters addressed to another daughter. The first thing Emma Reed noticed when she opened the attic door was that her father had fixed the broken latch. For almost 20 years, the brass hook had hung crooked from the frame, useless and loose, and Thomas Reed had always promised he would repair it one of these Saturdays. Emma used to tease him about it when she was young. Later, when every conversation between them became shorter and more careful, she stopped mentioning it. Now the latch shone against the old wood, polished and new, as if her father had climbed the narrow staircase in the last weeks of his life and finished one final, insignificant job. Emma stood beneath it with one hand on the door and felt grief arrive in the strangest way. Not as tears, not as pain, as irritation. "You had time to fix this," she whispered, "but not time to call me." The empty house did not answer. Outside, rain tapped against the roof of the small white farmhouse where Emma had grown up. The sound was soft but steady, spreading across the shingles like fingers on a table. In the rooms below, cardboard boxes weighted with black marker labels: keep, donate, sell, trash. Her father had been dead for 3 weeks, and Emma had spent 6 days sorting the evidence of his life into those 4 categories. His work boots were under the kitchen bench, still carrying dried mud in the soles. His coffee cup remained beside the sink because Emma could not make herself wrap it in newspaper. His coat hung by the back door, one sleeve turned inside out. Every object seemed to expect him to return and correct its position. The lawyer had told Emma there was no hurry to sell the house, but she did not believe in leaving difficult things unfinished. She had taken 2 weeks away from her marketing job in Chicago, driven 7 hours back to Bellwether, Ohio, and promised herself she would empty the house before she returned. That was how she handled pain. She made a list, she found a pen, she completed the list. The attic was the final room. She pushed the door open, and dust moved through the beam of her flashlight. The attic smelled of dry wood, old paper, and the cedar blocks her mother used to place between folded winter blankets. Boxes leaned against one another beneath the sloping roof. A child's rocking horse watched from the corner with one painted eye. Her high school yearbooks were stacked beside a sewing machine. Christmas decorations filled 3 plastic tubs, each labeled in her mother's careful handwriting. Emma stepped inside and sneezed. "Great," she said, "even the dust remembers me." She worked for an hour without finding anything surprising. Old tax records went into trash. Her mother's china went into keep, though Emma had nowhere to put it. A box of baby clothes went into donate until she found a tiny yellow dress with her name stitched inside the collar. She held it against her chest for a moment, then quietly moved the box into keep. Near the back wall, behind a rolled carpet, she discovered a narrow cedar chest she had never seen before. It was not large, perhaps 2 feet long, with dark metal corners and a small lock on the front. Her father's initials, TR, had been carved into the lid. The carving looked old and uneven, the work of a teenage hand. Emma pulled it into the light. The lock was closed, but a brass key had been taped underneath. Her first thought was that her father had left it for her. Her second thought was that he had hidden it from her. She sat cross-legged on the floor and turned the key. Inside lay a stack of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. There were more than 50 of them, arranged by date. The earliest envelope was yellowed and soft at the corners. The latest looked almost new. Every envelope carried the same handwriting, bold and slightly slanted, unmistakably her father's. But the name on the front was not Emma. It was Claire. "To my daughter, Claire." Emma stared at the words until the dust in the flashlight beam seemed to stop moving. Her father had 1 daughter. Ever? She untied the ribbon and picked up the oldest envelope. There was no stamp, no address, only a date written in the upper right corner. October 14, 1987. Emma had been born in 1991. Her fingers suddenly felt cold. She opened the letter. "My dearest Claire, today you are 1 month old. I have not held you since the morning you were born, but I remember the weight of you as clearly as if you were still asleep against my chest. You had dark hair and a small red mark beside your left ear. The nurse said it would fade. I hope it did. I do not know where you are tonight. I do not know what name they gave you. Your mother says the family who adopted you is kind and that they live far enough away for you to have a life untouched by our mistakes. I am trying to believe that love sometimes means letting go. Right now, it only feels like cowardice. I want you to know that you were wanted. Maybe not by the people who made the decisions, but by me. I wanted you before I knew how to be a father. I wanted you even when everyone said I had nothing to offer. They were probably right. I was 19, broke and frightened, but I loved you. I am writing because I cannot bear the thought that no one will ever tell you. Your father, Thomas. Emma read the letter twice. On the third attempt, the words blurred. She lowered the page to her lap and listened to the rain. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears. She looked around the attic, suddenly suspicious of every box, every shadow, every sealed container. The room had changed. It was no longer storage. It was a vault. Another daughter. A child born 4 years before Emma. A child her father had loved enough to write to for almost 4 decades, yet had never mentioned. Emma reached for the second letter. Then the third. She read until the light outside faded, and the attic became a small island in the dark. The letters formed a history her father had carried alone. He wrote to Claire on birthdays. He wrote when he joined a construction crew and learned to build houses. He wrote when he bought the farmhouse. He wrote when his own father died. He wrote about Emma's mother, Diane, describing her as the first person who had listened without judging him. One letter, dated 2 months before Emma's birth, made Emma stop. My dearest Claire, Diane and I are expecting a baby girl. I should be happy without reservation, but joy has brought guilt with it. I worry that loving this child will feel like replacing you. Diane says the heart is not a room with one chair. She says loving one daughter does not require abandoning another. We have decided to name her Emma. I promise I will tell her about you when she is old enough to understand. You are part of her story, whether we ever find you or not. I will not make you a secret. Your father, Thomas. Emma pressed her thumb against the signature. You promised, she said. The words came out louder than she intended. She searched through the remaining letters for an explanation. None came. Her father wrote about Emma's childhood with painful detail. Her first day of school, the time she broke her wrist jumping from the barn loft, the blue bicycle she rode into a ditch, her mother's cancer diagnosis, the long months of treatments, Diane's death when Emma was 17. He told Claire things he had never told Emma. In one letter, he admitted that after Diane died, he often sat in his truck at the edge of town because he did not want Emma to see him cry. In another, he described how Emma had stopped coming home for Christmas after an argument about selling the farm. Emma remembered that argument differently. She had been 28, exhausted from work, and frustrated by the way her father refused to discuss his health. She had suggested he move into a smaller place closer to town. He accused her of wanting to erase the family home. She accused him of loving the house more than he loved her. Neither apologized. After that, they spoke on birthdays and major holidays. Their calls were polite, brief, and full of weather. The latest letter had been written 5 weeks before he died. My dearest Claire, the doctor says the treatment is no longer working. I have not told Emma yet. I keep thinking I will find the right words, but I have spent my whole life waiting for the right words, and they have never come. I found you, Claire. After all these years, I found you. Your name is Grace Morgan now. You live in Cedar Falls, Pennsylvania. You teach children to read. You have a son named Noah and a laugh that looks exactly like your mother's. I saw a photograph online. I knew you before I saw the birth date. A father should not claim certainty after surrendering his right to know his child, but I knew. I wrote to you 3 times and destroyed every letter. What could I say? That I have loved you from a distance. That I built a life and raised another daughter while you grew up believing I had forgotten you? Love without courage is only a feeling. It does not become a gift until it asks something of the person who carries it. I am running out of time. Emma is stronger than I ever taught her to be. She is also angry with me, and she has reason. If I tell her now, she may think every memory was a lie. If I tell you, I may disturb a life you never asked me to enter. I used to believe silence protected people. Diane always said silence only protects the person who is afraid to speak. She was right. Your father, Thomas. Emma did not realize she was crying until a tear landed on the paper. Grace Morgan, Cedar Falls, Pennsylvania. A son named Noah. Her sister had a name. The knowledge felt impossible and intimate. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, a woman moved through ordinary rooms, perhaps washing dishes or folding laundry, unaware that a stranger in an Ohio attic was reading the history of her birth. Emma gathered the letters into uneven piles, searching for photographs, addresses, anything that could make Grace real. Beneath the letters lay a small envelope containing a newspaper clipping from 1987. Local teens survive Route 6 crash. The article named Thomas Reed, 19, and Rosemary Vale, 18. Their truck had left the road during a storm. Thomas suffered a broken collarbone. Rosemary, 7 months pregnant, was hospitalized overnight. Rosemary. Emma had never heard the name. At the bottom of the chest, she found a black and white photograph. Her father stood beside a girl with long, dark hair. They were young enough to believe time would wait for them. The girl was pregnant. Thomas had one arm around her shoulders and the other hand resting protectively over her stomach. On the back, someone had written, Tom, Rosie, and little Claire. Summer 1987. Emma carried the photograph downstairs. The farmhouse was dark except for the lamp beside the sofa. She spread the letters across the dining table, covering the surface where her family had eaten Sunday dinners and carved pumpkins and argued about college applications. The room suddenly seemed built over a hidden foundation. At 9 o'clock, Emma called her Aunt Caroline. Caroline was her mother's older sister and the only relative still living in Bellwether. She answered on the fourth ring. Emma, is everything all right? No. Caroline went silent. Emma looked at the photograph. Who was Rosemary Vale? The silence changed. It became recognition. Where did you hear that name? Caroline asked. In Dad's attic. Another pause. Caroline. Her aunt exhaled slowly. I think you should come over. No, I think you should answer me. Not on the phone. Then I'll ask one question. Did my father have another daughter? Caroline did not speak for so long that Emma almost ended the call. Yes, she finally said. Emma closed her eyes. The confirmation hurt more than the letters. Until that moment, part of her had hoped the story belonged to someone else. Maybe Thomas had written for a friend. Maybe Claire had died. Maybe the word daughter meant something symbolic. But Caroline's yes made Grace Morgan blood. You knew. Your mother knew. That wasn't my question. Yes, Caroline whispered, I knew. Emma stood so quickly the chair scraped across the floor. All of you knew. Not all of us, your grandparents did. I did. A few people in town probably remembered. It happened a long time ago. A long time ago doesn't mean it didn't happen. I know. No, you don't. I spent my whole life thinking I knew my family. Dad is dead. Mom is dead. And now I find out there's another daughter and everyone decided I didn't deserve the truth. It wasn't my truth to tell. Emma laughed once sharply. That is what people say when they choose the secret. Caroline's voice trembled. Your mother wanted to tell you. Then why didn't she? Because your father asked her to wait, first until you were older, then until he had found Claire, then until Rosemary agreed. There was always another reason. Rosemary is alive. She was the last I heard. Where? I don't know. Who arranged the adoption? Rosemary's parents. They were strict people, very concerned about reputation. Tom wanted to keep the baby, but his father told him he had no job, no savings, and no right to ruin her life with good intentions. Rosemary was injured in that car accident. She was frightened. They convinced her it was the only responsible choice. And Claire. Closed adoption, different name, no contact. Emma stared at the letters. Dad found her. Caroline inhaled. He did. 5 weeks before he died. Her name is Grace Morgan. Did he contact her? I don't know. Emma, listen to me. Whatever you do, remember she may not know any of this. She may have parents she loves. She may not want. What? The truth. She may not want strangers arriving with 40 years of grief. Emma's anger found a new target. You don't get to warn me about hurting her, you helped hide her. That is fair, Caroline said quietly, but it does not make the warning wrong. Emma ended the call. For the rest of the night, she searched for Grace Morgan online. There were dozens: a dentist in Arizona, a photographer in Maine, a real estate agent in Florida. Then she found Cedar Falls Elementary School and a staff page. Grace Morgan, reading specialist. The photograph was small, but Emma recognized her immediately. Grace had their father's eyes. Not simply the same color. The same shape, the same slight lift at the outer corners, the same expression of patient attention. Her dark hair was streaked with silver. She wore a green cardigan and held a children's book against her chest. Emma clicked through every public result she could find. Grace was 58. She had organized a community book drive. She had been married to Daniel Morgan, who died 6 years earlier. Her son, Noah, was 31 and worked as a paramedic. There was a photograph of Grace at a school fundraiser, laughing beside a table of cupcakes. The laugh her father had recognized. Emma leaned closer to the screen. She did not know what she expected to feel. Jealousy, perhaps, curiosity, resentment. Instead, she felt an aching familiarity, like seeing a room from a dream. At 2 a.m, she opened a blank email. Dear Ms. Morgan, my name is Emma Reed. I believe my father, Thomas Reed, may have been your biological father. She stopped. The sentence looked cruel on the screen, a weapon disguised as information. She deleted it. She tried again. Dear Grace, I found something after my father died that may concern you. Worse. She closed the laptop and paced through the kitchen. Her father's letters waited on the dining table. 40 years of hesitation had filled the room, and now it had been handed to her. Emma had always believed her father's greatest flaw was stubbornness. He would repair a roof in freezing rain rather than ask for help. He would drive with a fever. He would sit through Thanksgiving dinner in obvious pain and insist he was fine. But stubbornness was only the surface. Underneath it was fear. Fear of being forgiven, fear of not being forgiven, fear that speaking would destroy what silence had already damaged. Emma returned to the table and picked up the latest letter. Love without courage is only a feeling. She read the line again. Then she searched for Grace Morgan's home address. At sunrise, Emma packed the cedar chest into the trunk of her car. Cedar Falls was 6 hours away. She told herself she was only going to see the town. She would decide what to do after that. It was the kind of lie her father might have told himself. By 8 o'clock, the farmhouse was disappearing in her rearview mirror. The rain followed Emma east through most of Ohio. She drove with the cedar chest secured by a seat belt in the passenger seat, as if the letters were a person she was responsible for delivering safely. Every few miles, she glanced at the lid and imagined her father beside her. Thomas had taught her to drive on country roads when she was 14. He believed empty roads were safer than parking lots, though he spent most lessons gripping the dashboard and saying, "Easy, Em, easy." Once, after she stalled at an intersection, a truck honked behind them. Emma panicked, but her father calmly leaned across, turned on the hazard lights, and told her, "You don't owe anyone speed while you're learning." She had forgotten that memory until now. Grief was becoming a room with too many doors. Every secret opened into tenderness. Every tender memory led back to betrayal. Around noon, Caroline called. Emma let it ring twice before answering through the car speakers. "Where are you?" her aunt asked. "Driving." "Driving where?" "You already know." "Emma, please don't arrive at that woman's house without warning." "I haven't decided what I'm doing." "You packed the letters, didn't you?" Emma looked at the chest. "How do you know about the letters?" "I don't, but your father wrote everything he could not say." The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Caroline continued, "There is something else you should know." Emma tightened her hands on the steering wheel. "There's more. Your father tried to find her before. The letter said he found her recently. He found a possible address when you were 12. Your mother wrote to the adoption agency. They said they could place a letter in the file in case Claire ever requested contact. Did they? I believe so. What was in it? I never saw the letter. Did Claire request contact? Not then. Emma watched the highway stretch through a gray curtain of rain. Why did they stop searching? Rosemary asked them to. Why? I don't know all of it. She came back to Bellwether after many years. She and your father met once at the diner. Your mother knew. Afterward, Tom said they had agreed not to interfere in Claire's life. So he listened to Rosemary, instead of thinking about what Claire might want. They were both carrying shame, Emma. Shame does not make people wise. That sounds like forgiveness. No, it sounds like an explanation. Emma almost ended the call, then thought of the photograph in the chest. Do you know where Rosemary is now? I think she lives near Dayton. I can try to find out. Do that. Emma. What? Your father loved you. Emma's eyes burned, I know. It was the truth, and saying it made everything harder. She reached Cedar Falls shortly after 3. The town sat along a wide brown river in northeastern Pennsylvania, its brick storefronts built close together beneath green hills. A white church steeple rose above the main street. The rain had stopped, leaving sidewalks glossy and trees dripping. Emma checked into a roadside hotel under the name Reed and immediately wondered whether Grace would somehow see it. She showered, changed clothes, and opened her laptop at the small desk. Grace's school day would end soon. Emma found the number for Cedar Falls Elementary and stared at it for 10 minutes before calling. A cheerful recorded voice gave her several options. She pressed the number for the main office. Cedar Falls Elementary, this is Melissa. Hello, I'm trying to reach Grace Morgan. May I ask who's calling? Emma's mouth went dry. My name is Emma Reed. It's a family matter. Are you a parent or guardian of one of our students? No. Can I tell Ms. Morgan what this is regarding? Emma looked at the cedar chest. It concerns Thomas Reed. There was a pause as the receptionist wrote down the name. All right, may I place you on hold? Soft piano music played for nearly 2 minutes. Then a woman answered. This is Grace Morgan. Emma forgot the sentence she had rehearsed. The voice was warm and cautious, with a faint roughness at the edges. It did not sound like Thomas. It sounded like no one Emma knew. Hello. Ms. Morgan, my name is Emma Reed. Yes, the office told me. My father was Thomas Reed. He lived in Bellwether, Ohio. The silence on the line was immediate and complete. Emma heard a door close on Grace's end. When Grace spoke again, her voice had changed. Is he alive? Emma gripped the phone. No, he died 3 weeks ago. Grace exhaled. It was not a gasp, not quite. It sounded like someone lowering a heavy object. I'm sorry, she said. Emma had expected disbelief, anger, questions. She had not expected Grace to ask whether Thomas was alive. You knew his name. Yes. How? Another pause. I received a letter from him. When? 31 years ago. Emma stood up so quickly the desk chair rolled backward. He wrote to you. One letter. I was 27. My adoptive mother had died, and I requested my original records. Pennsylvania law was different then, and the agency would not release everything, but they gave me a letter that had been placed in my file. Emma looked toward the cedar chest. What did it say? I don't think this is a conversation we should have over the phone. I'm in Cedar Falls. Grace said nothing. I drove here today, Emma continued. I found letters in my father's attic. They're addressed to you. There are dozens. I see. The calmness in Grace's voice made Emma more nervous. I didn't want to arrive at your house, Emma said. I thought I should call. That was considerate. I don't know what I'm doing. For the first time, Grace's tone softened. Neither do I. They agreed to meet at a cafe on Main Street at 5:30. Emma arrived 20 minutes early and chose a table near the back. She placed the cedar chest on the chair beside her, then moved it under the table, then placed it back on the chair. She ordered coffee and did not drink it. At 5:28, Grace entered. Emma knew her before the door closed. Grace was shorter than she appeared in photographs. She wore black trousers, low shoes, and the same green cardigan from the school website. Her dark hair fell to her shoulders. She scanned the cafe, and when her eyes found Emma, she stopped. For several seconds, neither moved. Emma saw their father in Grace's face, but she also saw herself, not in any one feature. In the way Grace pressed her lips together when uncertain, in the small crease between her eyebrows, in the guarded stillness. Grace approached the table. "Is Emma?" And yes. They shook hands. It was absurdly formal. Grace sat across from her and rested both palms on the table. A thin silver wedding ring remained on her left hand. "You look like Diane," she said. Emma's breath caught. "You knew my mother's name." "It was in the letter." "What else was in it?" Grace looked at the cedar chest. "May I see that first?" Emma lifted it onto the table. When she opened the lid, Grace's composure broke. She touched the top envelope but did not pick it up. "To my daughter Claire," she read. "Was Claire your birth name?" Emma asked. "For one day, perhaps, my parents named me Grace." "Your adoptive parents?" "My parents," Grace said gently. The correction was not hostile, but Emma felt its boundary. "Of course I'm sorry." They were good people, William and Helen Morgan. My father repaired watches. My mother worked at the library. They told me I was adopted before I understood what the word meant. There was never a dramatic revelation. "Did you want to find your biological parents?" Grace considered the question. Sometimes, wanting is not always the same as searching. Emma almost laughed at the resemblance between that answer and her father's letters. She slid the oldest envelope across the table. Grace looked at the date. Her fingers shook. She opened it carefully and read. Emma watched a stranger absorb words written on the day she was 1 month old. The cafe continued around them. Cups touched saucers. A blender started behind the counter. Someone near the window laughed. Ordinary life seemed indecent. Grace finished the letter, folded it along the old creases, and returned it to the envelope. "He said the same thing in the agency letter," she said, "that I was wanted." "Why didn't you contact him?" Grace's expression closed. "I did." Emma stared at her. "I wrote to the return address," Grace continued. "I sent a letter 6 weeks after receiving his. It came back unopened. No forwarding address." "When was this?" 1995. My parents moved to the farmhouse in 1994. The address he used must have been older. "Did you try again?" "I called directory assistance. There were several Thomas Reeds. I was newly married. My father was ill, then I became pregnant with Noah. Life moved." "But you knew he was in Ohio." "I knew he had once been in Ohio." Emma felt anger rising again, irrational and directionless. "He kept writing to you." "So I see." "He thought you never wanted contact." "And I thought he had moved without leaving a way to be found." They sat with the terrible symmetry of it. Two people had reached across a distance at different times, and a change of address had swallowed both attempts. Grace looked through the envelopes, reading dates. "Why didn't he send these?" "I don't know." "You knew him." "Apparently not." "That is not fair to yourself." Emma's eyes snapped up. "You've known me for 12 minutes. And I have spent 12 minutes watching you blame yourself for a dead man's silence." The words were so direct that Emma had no reply. Grace withdrew her hand from the letters. "Did he write about your life?" "And yes." "Then these are private too." "They're addressed to you." "But they contain you." Emma had not considered that. Grace asked the barista for tea. While they waited, neither spoke. At last Emma said, "He found you recently. He knew about the school, Noah, your husband." Grace's face tightened at the word husband. How? Online, I think. He wrote that he recognized your laugh from a photograph. My school posts too much online. He wanted to contact you. But he didn't. He was dying. That makes silence more urgent, not less. Emma almost defended him. The impulse surprised her. You're angry, she said. I don't know what I am. You seem calm. I teach second graders. Calm is often just panic with good posture. Emma smiled despite herself. Grace's mouth lifted, and there it was, the laugh beginning behind her eyes, the expression from the photograph, the one Thomas had connected to a girl named Rosemary. For one fragile second, they were simply two women amused by the same sentence. Then Grace asked, what did he die from? Pancreatic cancer. How long was he sick? Almost a year. He told me it was treatable. I believed him because it was easier than visiting. That sounds like something a daughter says when she is punishing herself. Maybe I deserve to. No one deserves to make grief heavier than it already is. Emma looked away. Grace added, was he alone? The question carried more than concern. It carried accusation, though Emma could not tell whether it was aimed at her or Thomas. My Aunt Caroline checked on him, neighbors brought food, I came during the last week. Was he conscious? Sometimes. Did he say my name? No. Grace's eyes filled, but no tears fell. Emma wanted to explain that Thomas had barely spoken, that morphine made his words unclear, that he had gripped Emma's hand on the final night and said something she thought was, I'm sorry. But every explanation sounded like a defense of a man Grace had never been allowed to know. She opened the chest again. These belong to you. Grace shook her head, not tonight. I drove here to give them to you. No, you drove here because you needed to know whether I existed. Emma flinched. Grace's voice softened, and I needed to see whether you did. What does that mean? The agency letter told me he had married a woman named Diane. It said they hoped to have children. For years, I wondered if he did. Then the internet arrived, and searching became possible, but so did finding things you were not prepared to find. You found me. 6 years ago. Emma's throat tightened. You knew about me for 6 years. I found an obituary for your mother. It named Thomas and their daughter, Emma. There was a photograph of you both. Why didn't you contact us? Grace looked down at her tea. Because the letter from 1995 came back. Because 30 years had passed. Because your mother had just died, and I thought arriving with my history would be cruel. Because my husband was ill. Because I was afraid. Emma heard their father's voice in every reason. You could have tried. And yes, you let him die without knowing you had looked for him. And yes, Grace accepted the accusation so quietly that Emma's anger lost its shape. Do you regret it? Emma asked. Every day since you called. Emma looked at the woman across from her and understood for the first time that Grace had not spent 58 years waiting in a frozen room for the Reed family to find her. She had lived. She had loved parents, married, raised a child, buried people. She had made choices with incomplete information. The secret had not only been done to her, it had also become something she carried. Grace asked, do the letters mention Rosemary? Yes, not often. My birth mother. Did you know her name? Only the first name. The agency gave me non-identifying information. It said she liked music and wanted to become a nurse. She was in a car accident with Dad while pregnant. Grace frowned, I didn't know that. Caroline says Rosemary asked Dad to stop searching for you. When? After you received his letter, I think, I'm not sure. Grace sat back, that doesn't make sense. Why? Because someone contacted me in 2003, claiming to be my birth mother. Emma's skin prickled. Rosemary. She called herself Rose. She knew my birth date and the hospital she asked to meet. Did you? No. Why not? She wanted money. Emma stared at her. She said she was behind on rent. Grace continued. She said she had medical bills. I asked for proof of who she was. She became angry and told me Thomas had never wanted me, that he had signed the papers eagerly and left town before I was born. That's not true. He held you after you were born. I know that now. Did Rose call again? Twice, the last time she threatened to contact my son. I changed my number. Emma thought of Caroline's warning that Grace might not want strangers bringing 40 years of grief. Perhaps the warning came from more than caution. Do you still have anything from those calls? I wrote down the number. Daniel kept records of everything. It may be in a file at home. We need to find Rosemary. Grace gave her a long look. Why? To learn the truth. We already have enough truth to ruin a week. She may know why Dad stopped searching. She may know about the letters. And she may be an unstable woman who tried to fright me into giving her money. Or the caller may not have been Rosemary. Grace's eyes narrowed. Emma pulled out her phone and called Caroline. Her aunt answered immediately. Did you meet her? I'm with Grace now. Grace looked startled at the use of her name. Emma put the call on speaker. Caroline, she said, did Rosemary ever ask Grace for money? What? In 2003, someone claiming to be Rosemary called her. I don't know anything about that. Where is Rosemary? I found an old address. She lived in Dayton until 2018. And after that, I'm still looking. Grace leaned toward the phone. Ms. Dalton. Caroline became silent. And yes, my name is Grace Morgan. I know. No, Grace said. You know Claire. Grace is the person I became. Caroline inhaled shakily. You're right, I'm sorry. Did Thomas ever receive a letter from me? I don't know. I sent one in 1995. He never mentioned it. Did Diane know he had written to me? Yes, she helped him write the agency letter. Grace closed her eyes. Emma asked, why did Rosemary ask them to stop searching? Caroline hesitated. I only know what Diane told me. Rosemary said Claire had contacted her and wanted no relationship. Grace's eyes opened. I never contacted Rosemary. The cafe seemed to become very quiet. Caroline said, are you certain? And yes. Emma leaned closer to the phone. Someone lied. No one needed to say who. Before ending the call, Caroline promised to search her old address book and speak to a retired nurse who had known Rosemary's family. Grace and Emma remained at the cafe until closing. They read 5 letters together. In one, Thomas described Emma's birth. Diane is asleep, and Emma is beside her in a clear plastic crib. I thought seeing her would bring back the day you were born, and it did, but not in the way I feared. I did not feel that she had taken your place. I felt how enormous the empty place had always been. Grace stopped reading. Was he a good father? She asked. Emma wanted to give a simple answer. Instead, she said, he made pancakes every Sunday, but he always burned the first one. He came to every school play, even when I had one line. He taught me to change a tire and then secretly followed me the first time I drove alone. He forgot birthdays unless Mom reminded him. After she died, he forgot how to talk about anything that mattered. He could be harsh when he was scared. He once drove 4 hours to bring me a winter coat and left it with the doorman because we were fighting. Grace listened as if each detail were a bead she could hold. He sounds complicated. He was. All fathers are, I suppose, even the ones we invent. Emma asked about William Morgan. Grace smiled. He was quiet, not secretive exactly, just economical with words. He could repair anything with gears. When I was little, I believed watches stopped because they missed him. He made toast every morning and cut it diagonally because I refused to eat squares. He cried when I left for college and denied it until the day he died. Did he know you searched? Yes, he helped. He said biology was not a threat to love. Emma looked down at her hands. My father behaved as if it was. Perhaps because he did not trust that love would choose him. They carried the cedar chest to Grace's car after the cafe closed. Grace invited Emma to her house for dinner. Emma nearly declined out of habit. She did not like entering situations without knowing the rules, but there were no rules for meeting a sister hidden by 4 decades of silence. Grace lived in a blue house on a tree-lined street 10 minutes from the school. Books filled the living room. Family photographs covered the mantel. Grace and a tall man with a gentle face, a young Noah in a baseball uniform, an older Noah wearing paramedic blues, William and Helen Morgan on a beach, squinting into the sun. Emma stood before the photographs while Grace heated soup. She was looking at a family that had existed without her. The thought was painful, but not because Grace had been happy. It was painful because Thomas had never seen any of it. A key turned in the front door. "Mom," a man called. Grace froze in the kitchen. A tall man entered carrying a paper bag. He had dark hair, tired eyes, and the alert posture of someone accustomed to emergencies. He stopped when he saw Emma. "Hello." Grace came into the room, wiping her hands on a towel. "Noah, this is Emma Reed." He looked from his mother to Emma, then noticed the cedar chest on the coffee table. Grace said, "Thomas Reed died 3 weeks ago." Noah's expression changed. He knew the name. Emma realized Grace had not carried the story alone. Noah set down the bag. "He was your father." Grace nodded. "And Emma is." "My daughter," Emma said automatically, remembering the envelopes. Then she corrected herself. "His daughter, his other daughter." Noah stared at her for several seconds. "So you're my aunt?" The word landed in the room with surprising force. Emma had never been an aunt. She had no children, no siblings, no nieces or nephews. She had believed the Reed family would end with her. "I suppose I am," she said. Noah crossed the room and hugged her. Emma stood rigid in his arms, too shocked to respond. He released her quickly. "Sorry, we hug in emergencies." "This qualifies," Grace said. Emma laughed and then, without warning, began to cry. Not gracefully, not quietly. She covered her face with both hands, embarrassed by the sound that came from her. Noah stepped back. Grace approached slowly and placed a hand between Emma's shoulders. Emma cried for the father who had died, for the sister he had lost, for the mother who had helped write a letter that arrived decades too early and every truth that arrived too late. She cried because a stranger had called her aunt and opened a door she had not known existed. When the tears stopped, Grace handed her a dish towel because the tissue box was empty. "My family specializes in elegant first meetings," she said. Emma wiped her face, clearly. They ate soup at the kitchen table. Noah asked careful questions, and Emma answered what she could. She described Thomas's work, the farmhouse, Diane's garden, the cancer. Grace told Emma that Noah had known about her adoption since childhood and about Thomas since she found the obituary 6 years earlier. "Mom used to open his obituary on her laptop and stare at it," Noah said. Grace gave him a warning look. "What, you did?" "Did you ever tell her to contact him?" Emma asked. "Constantly." Grace folded her napkin. "My son believes every problem can be solved by immediate action. I'm a paramedic. He once broke into my bathroom because I did not answer for 3 minutes. You had the flu. I was brushing my teeth." Emma smiled. Their affection was easy, practiced, unafraid. She had loved her father deeply, but their love had required translation. This family spoke it openly. After dinner, Grace brought out a metal file box from the hall closet. Inside were adoption papers, her parents' records, Daniel's death certificate, and a folder marked personal. She removed a returned envelope. "Thomas Reed, 214 Mercer Street, Bellwether, Ohio." The postmark was March 1995. Across the front, a red stamp read UNDLIVRABLE, no forwarding address. The seal had never been broken. Grace held it toward Emma. "This was my letter." Emma did not take it. "It's yours." "It was written to him. He's gone." "Then perhaps it is for you now." Emma opened the envelope carefully. The handwriting inside was neat, with small rounded letters. Dear Mr. Reed, I received the letter you placed in my adoption file. I have read it many times, and I still do not know how to answer. I was raised by loving parents, and I do not want you to think I am searching because anything was missing. Still, I have wondered about you all my life. You wrote that I was wanted. Thank you. I did not know I needed those words until I saw them. I would like to exchange letters before deciding whether to meet. I have questions, and I assume you do too. I hope we can be honest without making promises we do not yet know how to keep. My name is Grace Helen Morgan. I am 27 years old. I am married to a kind man named Daniel. I work at a public library. I like old movies, thunderstorms, and strawberry ice cream. I dislike people who talk during movies and raisins in anything. I have a small red birthmark behind my left ear. It never faded. Sincerely, Grace. Emma looked up. Grace moved her hair aside. Behind her left ear was a small red mark. Thomas had remembered it for 38 years. Emma placed the letter on the table and began to cry again, though this time no one tried to stop her. The next morning, Emma woke in the roadside hotel with the returned letter on the table beside her bed. Grace had insisted she take it. For 31 years, the envelope had waited for Thomas. Now it had crossed the final distance without him. Emma read it again while drinking bad hotel coffee. The details were so ordinary that they hurt most. Strawberry ice cream, old movies, raisins. Her father had spent a lifetime imagining Claire, while Grace had offered him a real person in one page. The letter had failed because a house had been sold and no one had thought to leave an address. At 8:30, Caroline called. I found Rosemary, she said. Emma sat up. Where? A care facility outside Dayton. She had a stroke last year. Can she speak? I don't know. I spoke to the director. She could not confirm anything, but she agreed to give Rosemary my number. Rosemary called me 10 minutes ago. Emma looked out at the hotel parking lot. What did she say? She asked whether Tom was dead. The question was becoming a pattern. Is he alive? Is he dead? As though Thomas Reed had been a door everyone feared opening until it could no longer move. I told her yes, Caroline continued. Then I told her you found Grace. And she cried, she wants to see both of you. Emma called Grace. By noon, they were driving west in Grace's car. Noah had wanted to come, but Grace asked him not to. This began before him, she said. I need to meet it without making him carry it. The trip took more than 7 hours. They spoke in fragments at first, each wary of filling the silence incorrectly. Grace asked what Emma did in Chicago. Emma explained campaigns, clients, deadlines, and the strange business of convincing people to care about products for 30 seconds at a time. Are you married? Grace asked. No. By choice. Mostly by scheduling. Grace smiled. Children? No. Emma waited for the familiar look of pity or concern. Grace only nodded. I used to think I wanted 3, Emma continued. Then Mom got sick, then work became everything. Then I kept assuming I had more time to decide. Time encourages that assumption. What about you? Did you want more children? Yes, we lost a pregnancy after Noah. Then Daniel became ill a few years later. Life made the decision for us. I'm sorry. So am I. The answer was plain, without forcing tragedy into gratitude. Emma appreciated it. They stopped for gas near the Pennsylvania border. Grace bought strawberry ice cream from the convenience store freezer and held up 2 cups. Research, she said. Emma chose chocolate. In the car, Grace tasted the strawberry and frowned. Too sweet. You wrote that you liked it. I was 27, people evolve. Dad hated raisins too. Grace looked at her. Did he? Mom put them in oatmeal cookies once. He accused her of ruining perfectly good food. Grace laughed. Emma heard Thomas in it now, not because the sound was the same, but because he had described it. His recognition had become hers. As dusk fell, the conversation turned toward the farmhouse. What will you do with it? Grace asked. And sell it? You decided quickly. I live in Chicago. That was not my question. Emma glanced at her. Grace looked ahead. Do you want to sell it? I don't know what wanting has to do with practicality. Usually very little, still worth asking. Emma thought of the kitchen, the fixed latch, her mother's garden buried under weeds. I used to hate that house, she said. When Mom died, every room felt like a museum Dad expected me to guard. I wanted him to leave. I wanted both of us to start over. He took that as rejection. Was it? Partly. Grace nodded, allowing the contradiction. At 7:30, they reached the care facility. Rosemary Vale was waiting in a small sitting room beside a window. She was 77 and thinner than Emma expected. One side of her face drooped slightly from the stroke. Her white hair had been pinned neatly at the back of her head. She wore a lavender sweater and held a tissue crushed in one hand. When Grace entered, Rosemary stood too quickly and reached for the arm of the chair. Grace stopped several feet away. Rosemary stared at her face. Oh, she whispered. It was the sound of a life collapsing into one syllable. You look like my mother. Grace's expression hardened. I was told I looked like you. You do, around the mouths. Emma remained near the door. Rosemary looked at her next. You're Diane's girl. My name is Emma. Yes, Emma. The fact that Rosemary knew her name felt invasive. Grace sat across from her. Emma took the chair beside Grace. For several seconds, Rosemary cried silently. Grace did not reach for her. You called me in 2003, she said. Rosemary nodded. You asked for money. And yes. You told me Thomas never wanted me. Rosemary closed her eyes. Yes. Was any of that true? The medical bills were real. That was not what I asked. No, Rosemary's voice cracked. Tom wanted you. Grace's hands tightened in her lap. Why did you lie? Rosemary looked toward the darkening window. Because I had spent 16 years telling myself he had forced me to give you away. Then his letter found you, and I learned he had been writing. He had married. He had a daughter. He built a good life while mine. She stopped. While yours what? Grace asked. Mine became a collection of consequences. Emma leaned forward. That does not explain telling him Grace wanted no contact. Rosemary looked at her sharply, then lowered her eyes. So that is in the letters. No, Caroline told us. Rosemary's fingers worked the tissue into smaller pieces. After Grace refused to meet me, I went to Bellwether. I found Tom. I told him I had spoken to her and that she wanted us to leave her alone. Why? Emma demanded. Because she rejected me. I asked you for proof, Grace said. You threatened my son. I was drinking then. That is an explanation, Grace said, not an apology. Rosemary looked at her with tears gathering again. I am sorry. Grace's face did not soften. Rosemary continued. I was angry that you had good parents. I know how terrible that sounds. I should have been grateful. Part of me was. But another part looked at the life you had and thought, that should have been mine. I should have been the one at the school plays and birthdays. I should have been the one you called Mom. You gave me up. My parents gave you up. You signed the papers. I was 18. I had a fractured pelvis. My father stood beside the hospital bed and said if I kept you, I could never come home. My mother told me love meant giving you a stable family. Tom's father told him the same. Everyone spoke as though the decision had already been made, and eventually I repeated it. Thomas's first letter returned to Emma. I am trying to believe that love sometimes means letting go. Right now, it only feels like cowardice. Rosemary pressed the tissue to her mouth. Afterward, Tom wanted us to run away and try to get you back. I refused. The agency said the adoption was final. I wanted to leave Bellwether. I wanted to forget. Did you? Grace asked. No. The answer came without hesitation. Rosemary reached into the pocket of her sweater and removed a folded photograph. It was a copy of the same picture from the cedar chest. Young Thomas, pregnant Rosemary, and the child between them who had not yet entered the world. I carried this for 40 years, she said. Grace did not take it. You carried a photograph, she said. My mother carried me through fevers. My father taught me to ride a bicycle. They paid for braces in college. They sat beside me when Daniel died. I am sorry you were pressured. I am sorry you suffered. But suffering does not turn cruelty into love. Rosemary bowed her head. Emma had expected a reunion shaped by tears and instinct, a mother and daughter recognizing one another across lost years. Instead, she saw something more honest. Biology had opened a door, but it had not built the room beyond it. Grace said, "Did Thomas believe you?" And yes, completely. He wanted to, it excused his fear. Emma felt the truth of that before Rosemary finished speaking. Thomas had accepted the lie because it allowed him to remain silent while calling the silence sacrifice. Did Diane know? Emma asked. No, Tom said he would tell her, but I asked him not to. I said Grace had made her choice and deserved privacy. Emma's anger sharpened. You used her name to protect yourself. And yes. Then years later, Dad found Grace online. Rosemary nodded. He called me last winter. Emma and Grace exchanged a look. What did he say? Grace asked. He told me he had cancer. He said he wanted to contact you. I told him he should. Why then? Because time had finally taken away every excuse. Did he tell you about the letters? And yes. Did he say what he planned to do with them? Rosemary looked at Emma. He said he had changed his will. Emma went still. The lawyer had not mentioned a change. He had only said probate would take time and that Thomas's estate was straightforward. What change? He said he was leaving the farmhouse to both daughters. The room seemed to tilt. Grace turned to Emma. I don't want it. Emma heard only the word both. Her father had divided the house between the daughter who stayed in his life and the daughter who existed in letters. The quick, wounded part of Emma interpreted it as a verdict. Half for 35 years of shared meals, arguments, hospital rooms, and loss. Half for an absence. Rosemary watched her face. He did not mean to take from you, she said. You don't know what he meant. He said the house belonged to the whole truth, not only the part he had lived openly. Emma stood. I need air. She walked into the hallway and kept going until she reached a courtyard behind the building. Night had settled over the lawn. A fountain bubbled beneath a yellow light. Grace followed after a minute. I will sign it over to you, she said. I didn't ask you to. You didn't need to. Emma folded her arms. He left half his house to someone he never met. He left it to his daughter. And what was I? Grace recoiled slightly. Emma knew the words were unfair and could not stop. I was the one who watched him die. I was the one who cleaned the rooms. I was the one who got the calls from doctors and signed the hospice papers. You had parents. You had a family. Now he gives you half of mine because he felt guilty. Grace's face became very still. You think I wanted your half. I don't know what you want. I wanted one conversation with him. The quiet force of her answer cut through Emma's anger. One conversation, Grace repeated. I wanted to ask whether I wrinkle my forehead like him. I wanted to know if he was good at mathematics because I am terrible at it. I wanted to tell him my parents loved me so he could stop imagining me abandoned. I wanted him to know Noah. I wanted to hear him say my name once. Keep the house, Emma. Burn the letters. Forget I exist again if that makes the accounting easier. But do not tell me I came here to take something from you. She turned toward the door. Emma caught her arm. Grace stopped but did not look back. I'm sorry, Emma said. Grace's shoulders rose and fell. I am angry at him, Emma continued, and he is not here, so it keeps landing on everyone who is. Grace turned. That is grief, she said. It has terrible aim. They stood beneath the courtyard light, two daughters of the same frightened man. I don't want to forget you exist, Emma said. Grace looked toward the window where Rosemary waited alone. Then we should stop making decisions tonight. They returned to the sitting room. Rosemary had placed the photograph on the table. She did not ask Grace to take it again. Before leaving, Grace gave her an email address. "This is not forgiveness," she said. "It is a way to contact me that does not involve threats or lies." Rosemary held the slip of paper with both hands. "It is more than I deserve." "Perhaps," Grace said, "but what you deserve is not the only thing that matters." They drove to a hotel near Dayton in silence. At the front desk, Emma's phone rang. The caller was Martin Hale, her father's attorney. "Ms. Reed, I apologize for calling late, but your aunt contacted me. She said you had questions about your father's will." "Did he leave the house to Grace Morgan?" There was a pause. "Yes, to you and Grace Morgan in equal shares." Emma closed her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I intended to explain at our formal probate meeting next week. There is also a sealed item he instructed me to release only after both beneficiaries had been located." "Grace is with me." "In that case, I can meet you tomorrow morning. I'm in Columbus for court, which is on your route back." "What is the item?" "A digital recorder." Emma looked at Grace. "Did you listen to it?" "No." The next morning, they met Martin in a quiet conference room overlooking downtown Columbus. He was a silver-haired man who had handled Thomas's contracts for years. He placed a small recorder and a sealed envelope on the table. "Your father made this recording 9 days before he died," he said. "He was very specific that both of you should hear it together." Grace sat beside Emma. Martin left the room. Emma pressed play. For several seconds, there was only static and Thomas's breathing. Then his voice filled the room. "Emma, if you found Grace, then you did the brave thing I kept postponing." Emma covered her mouth. His voice was weaker than she remembered, but unmistakable. "Grace, I do not know what name you prefer, so I will use the name you chose. I have called you Claire in my mind for almost 40 years. That was selfish. Claire was the baby I lost. Grace is the woman you became without me. I wrote letters because paper never asked me to face the harm I had done. I could be honest in an envelope and still remain a coward in life. I told myself I was respecting your privacy. The truth is, I was afraid you would reject me. Later, when I learned that you had wanted no contact, I accepted it too easily. Only recently did I begin to question whether I had been told the truth. I learned last winter that you wrote back. Rosemary told me you had sent a letter in 1995 and that it was returned. She had known since contacting you years later, but shame kept her silent. Grace, you did write back. I know that now. You offered me a chance and I was not there to receive it." Grace began to cry silently. Emma reached for her hand. Thomas continued. "I have left the farmhouse to both of you. Emma, this is not because I love you by half. You were the joy of my daily life, even when I made that life difficult. You gave me more forgiveness than I earned and more chances than I used. I am sorry I did not tell you I was dying soon enough. I thought protecting you from fear was love. I should have learned better. Grace, the house is not payment. Nothing can pay for absence. It is simply the only place that holds all the years I wrote to you. Your letters are in the attic. Diane knew about everyone until she died. She believed that one day you might sit at our table. I hope the two of you do not mistake inheritance for obligation. Sell the house. Keep it. Give it away. I only ask that you make the choice together, not as strangers competing over a dead man's regret. There is one more thing. Emma, the night before your mother died, she made me promise I would tell you about Grace. I broke that promise. I thought there would be time after the funeral, then after college, then after the next Christmas. Silence becomes a habit faster than honesty. Grace, I loved the idea of you for 40 years. I do not have the right to claim that I knew you. I wish I had asked for the chance. To both my daughters, do not inherit my silence. Speak, even when the words arrive imperfectly. I am sorry. I love you. The recording ended. No one moved. Through the windows, traffic flowed far below. The city continued, indifferent to the fact that a dead man had finally spoken. Grace squeezed Emma's hand. He knew about my letter, she whispered. And yes, he knew I tried. And yes, Emma played the recording again. The second time, she listened less for apology and more for her father's breath between sentences. She imagined him alone in the lawyer's office, gathering the courage that death had made urgent. When it ended, Grace said, "I don't want to sell the house yet." Emma looked at her. "Neither do I." They drove back to Bellwether together. Caroline was waiting on the porch when they arrived. She hugged Emma, then stood uncertainly before Grace. "I should have told her," Caroline said. Grace glanced at Emma. "We are trying not to inherit silence." Caroline's eyes filled. "Then I'm sorry. I told myself loyalty meant keeping Diane's confidence, but after Diane died, it became easier to keep doing nothing." Grace nodded. "Thank you for saying it." Inside, the farmhouse smelled faintly of dust and coffee. Emma carried the cedar chest to the dining table. Grace walked through the room slowly, touching nothing. She paused before Diane's photograph on the mantel. "She had kind eyes," she said. "Oh, she did. I wish I had known her. She would have liked you." "How can you know?" "She hated raisins too." Grace smiled. They climbed to the attic before sunset. The repaired latch caught the light. Emma showed Grace the rocking horse, the Christmas decorations, and the box of baby clothes. They sat on the floor beneath the sloping roof and read the letters in order. Some made them cry. Some made them angry. One described 6-year-old Emma cutting her own hair and blaming the dog. Grace laughed so hard she had to remove her glasses. "I was going through a creative period," Emma said. "You were framing an animal." He looked suspicious. They read until the attic became dark. Over the next week, Grace stayed at the farmhouse. Noah visited on Saturday and repaired a loose porch rail before anyone asked. Caroline brought casseroles and stories about Diane. Rosemary sent one email to Grace. It contained no request, only an apology written without excuses. Grace read it and put it aside. Emma postponed her return to Chicago. She and Grace met with Martin and agreed to keep the house for 1 year before deciding its future. The decision surprised them both. Neither knew what the house would become, but for the first time, uncertainty did not feel like failure. In October, they returned together. They cleaned the attic completely. Emma found shelves at a salvage store. Noah installed them beneath the repaired latch. Grace placed the letters in archival boxes so the paper would not continue to fade. On the dining room wall, they hung the photograph of Thomas and Rosemary from 1987. Beside it, they placed a photograph of William and Helen Morgan. No family replaced another. The following spring, the farmhouse opened one Saturday each month as a free reading room for local children. Grace brought books from school. Emma designed a small sign for the porch. The Diane and Helen House. Stories deserve a place to be heard. They chose the mothers' names because both women had understood something Thomas learned too late. Love did not become smaller when truth entered the room. Rosemary never came to the house. Grace exchanged occasional emails with her, cautiously and without pretending that contact erased harm. Some wounds closed, others simply became easier to carry. Emma returned to Chicago, but came home twice a month. Home. The word no longer belonged to one building or one version of the past. A year after Thomas's death, Emma and Grace sat at the dining table on the evening of Grace's birthday. Noah had driven in with a strawberry cake that Grace declared too sweet before eating 2 slices. Caroline lit candles. Rain tapped lightly against the windows. After dinner, Emma handed Grace a blue ribbon. It was the ribbon that had once tied the letters together. Grace ran it through her fingers. "What should I do with it?" she asked. "Whatever you want." Grace walked to the cedar chest and tied the ribbon around a new stack of envelopes. These letters were not from Thomas. They were from Emma. One for every birthday Grace had lived before they met. Grace looked at the dates and began to cry. "I didn't know you then," Emma said, "so I wrote what I wish I could have told you." Grace opened the first. "Dear Grace, today you are 1 year old, and somewhere our father is probably burning the first pancake of the morning. I do not exist yet, but one day I will. One day I will climb into an attic and find your name. I will be angry that no one told me, and frightened that finding you means losing part of what I believed was mine. I will be wrong. Finding you will not divide my family. It will reveal how much of it was waiting outside the story I had been given. Happy birthday, sister. Love. Emma. Grace lowered the page. For a moment, she could not speak. Then she moved around the table and wrapped her arms around Emma. This time, Emma hugged her back immediately. Outside, rain moved over the farmhouse roof, soft and steady. Upstairs, the attic door stood open beneath the latch Thomas had finally repaired. The old letters rested beside the new ones, not hidden, not destroyed, not mistaken for the whole story. For most of his life, Thomas Reed had believed silence could protect the people he loved. In the end, the truth hurt them. It angered them. It changed the shape of every memory they thought they understood. But it also led one daughter across 600 miles to a cafe, placed another daughter's letter into the hands that should have received it 31 years earlier, and turned a house built around a secret into a place where stories were spoken aloud. The letters in the attic had been addressed to another daughter. But the truth inside them belonged to both. And once it was finally opened, neither woman had to carry it alone.